We all have an ego. Our ego is basically a protective function for our psyche. It is a construct of the identity that we associate ourselves with or believe that we have to be in order to survive in the world. And as I said, it has a protective role. It basically tries to shield us from our fears, from pain, from insecurities by creating narratives, by creating a worldview, by creating core beliefs that we tend to live our lives by. And in doing so, it reduces the amount of processing that we have to do on a daily basis. I mean, we are being bombarded with so much stimuli at every moment. And in order for us to process it all, it would basically mean that we'd never be able to do anything. So, in order to reduce our cognitive load and the amount of processing that we need to do, we make predictions and we are convinced that these predictions are reality, and oftentimes they're not. Oftentimes we are making assumptions, we are living to our expectations, we are living to our presumptions about the world around us as opposed to seeing things as they actually are. And I suppose it's recognizing that this isn't something necessarily that is a good or bad thing, but that the more aware we are of it, the more likely we are to be conscious and to recognize that some of our thinking, some of our interpretations can be faulty and can actually be causing us a lot of pain and distress. Now, there tends to be a lot of negative connotations about the ego, and ultimately, the ego just is. I mean, it's not like as if it's any reflection on who you are. As I said, we all have one, but it's just recognizing that frequently we tend to over identify with our egoic thinking. We tend to assume that the identity or the narrative that we have of ourselves, either positive or negative, is actually who we are, as opposed to being a thought process and a construct. Additionally, the egoic mind tends to be quite judgmental and defensive because, again, it's all about protecting the psyche, it's all about protecting an individual from any pain, from any discomfort. However, in doing so, it also prevents growth and can result in a person, I suppose, becoming very reactive as opposed to being able to respond to their life in a way that promotes connection and that promotes peace of mind for the individual. The more we can learn to recognize our subconscious automated processing, the egoic stories that we have about ourselves, about other people, whether they be positive or negative, the assumptions that we are making on a daily basis, the more likely we are to, I suppose, actually be able to deal with whatever pain crops up, but not to get caught up in it, because you begin to take things less personally. I mean, the ego assumes that everything is about the ego, about the individual, and this is very seldom the case. And the more we can detach ourselves from other people's behaviors, from other people's interpretations of us, the more likely we are to be able to build an identity for ourselves that is congruent with our authenticity, to be able to tap into who it is that we really are, as opposed to the identity that we have created for ourselves in an attempt to feel safe, in an attempt to avoid rejection, or in an attempt to feel good about oneself, to feel like as if we are worthy or adequate or enough, as opposed to recognizing that we are always enough, that the more we tap into our inner truth, the more we realize how very adequate we are, and the more likely we are to make choices that are in alignment with who it is that we are and who it is that we need to be in order to feel fulfilled and in order to feel like as if our life has significance. Moving from our default thinking processes into a more conscious way of living requires effort. I mean, the narratives that we have, the stories and beliefs that we have, they have become habituated and consequently they're easy. Whereas to become more conscious and to challenge your beliefs, to challenge your interpretations requires a lot of effort. And this is why a lot of people don't do it. It's easier just to kind of numb pain rather than actually face into it and ask yourself, okay, what part do I have to play in my life? Who is it that I actually am? as opposed to who is it that I believe I need to be or I believe I am. And this can be scary for people. We're very attached to our identity, we're very attached to these constructs. So it's about being very, I suppose, compassionate with yourself on this journey, and also being quite humble, because basically to start seeing things a little bit more objectively means surrendering a lot of your beliefs which may have had a protective function in your life. And this is why this work is sometimes referred to as the dark night of the soul, where you basically shed some of the personas that you have created for yourself as a way of attaining attachment, or as a way of feeling accepted in your world. And you find out who it is that you actually are underneath all of those layers. So it can be quite unsettling. It can involve, I suppose, discarding of things in your life that no longer serve you or that never actually did. And as I said, this can be a frightening process because it can completely transform a person's life. This work is frequently referred to as shadow work because it involves acknowledging parts of ourselves that we would rather deny or suppress or just not acknowledge, and that can be quite uncomfortable. There's a lot of ambiguity involved as well, and I mean, our ego is all about the safety of familiarity and repetition, as opposed to stepping into ambiguity, stepping into questioning who you actually are, who you have been, and asking yourself, is this who I am at my core? Am I living a life that's congruent? And as I said, these questions can really shake a person up. You're stepping into your deepest fears. You're acknowledging the parts of yourself that you're ashamed of. And you are meeting all of those parts with compassion. So it involves tolerance and patience as well. If you would like to find out more about how you can work through some of your defenses, how you can identify coping mechanisms that you have created, are structures, identities that you have created in an attempt to fit into your world, then get in touch with me on the website. It is fundamentals.ie.